A Kuomintang heavyweight makes a trip to China for a controversial parade marking the end of World War II.
如果有国人出席中方的活动相关的行为，这不仅和台湾的主流民意相违背，也更不能代表台湾以及全体人民的立场。
世界进入新的动荡变革期，全球治理走到新的十字路口。
At a major summit, China, Russia and India aim to shake up the US-led international order. Taiwan's foreign minister makes a secret visit to the Philippines, raising questions about unofficial diplomacy on the way. Plus,
身为民意代表，我们都必须正视台湾处在一个非常复杂的地缘环境。
new members of Taiwan's National Security Council are putting the nation's young leaders on display. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Laurel Stewart. On Wednesday, China will hold a military parade to mark 80 years since Japan's surrender in World War II. That event is controversial here in Taiwan, with the government urging the public not to attend. But one prominent figure from the opposition, Kuomintang, has flown to Beijing to be there. Leslie Liao reports.
A decorated member of Taiwan's main opposition, Kuomintang, or KMT, is now in Beijing, getting ready to join a military parade commemorating Japan's surrender in World War II. Hong Xiuzhu is a former legislator, former presidential candidate, and former KMT chair. Her trip comes at a particularly sensitive time. Taiwan's government has banned government officials from attending the military parade, saying it's part of Beijing's attempts to appropriate Taiwan's history as its own to reinforce its claims over Taiwan. It has also warned that people could face legal issues if they go to the event and play along with China's propaganda campaign.
我们也呼吁国人面对中共企图消灭国家主权、主张武力、暴力来解决政治分歧的行为予以谴责，不应该与敌共舞，配合统战与宣传，做出损害国家利益的事情。
Taiwan and China have been in a heated war of words over their roles in World War II. China says it's celebrating the Japanese Empire's defeat at the hands of the Chinese Communist Party. But Taiwan says that the Republic of China, the government the country officially represents, is the one that led the fight against the Japanese in World War II. Hong Xiuzhu argues the war between China and Japan is a memory shared among people from both Taiwan and China. She says her trip is to commemorate and honor those who fought for the shared cause of defeating the Japanese. Even so, Hong's expected appearance in the military parade may be seen by some as siding with China's version of history.
This particular trip by Hong is particularly controversial because it touches on sensitivities on all sides of the political spectrum. On the one hand, it appears that she's endorsing, in spite of her making quite pro-ROC comments, the event itself is downplaying the role of the KMT-led Republic of China and elevating that of the Chinese Communist Party.
Some members from Hong's own party also seem to be distancing themselves from her stance.
毕竟他现在已经不在其位了啦，不是代表现在的中国国民党哈，所以他的其实上他还是代表他个人前往。基于宪法上保障我们哈迁徙自由的规定的哈，政府不用做太多的一个联想。
Hong seems intent on attending the military parade, but government officials here say her previous role as deputy legislative speaker gave her access to classified budgets, meaning her decision to go to Beijing could see her land in hot water when she returns home. Luffy Lee, Devin Tsai, and Leslie Liao for TaiwanPlus.
China's parade will bring together world leaders, including those from Russia and North Korea, in a show of defiance against the West. As we just heard, Taiwan is warning people against attending, but it's also criticizing the whole event as a distortion of history. John Ventriest reports.
Security's tight on the streets of Beijing as the city prepares for a military parade that has the world's attention. A parade marking 80 years since Japan's surrender after years of brutal war with China. The message here is that it was China's ruling Communist Party that got the job of defeating Japan done. It's quiet for now, but in just a day, some of China's most advanced weaponry will proceed down this road, along with more than 10,000 troops, a show of how strong China's military's become. Though there are some restrictions on daily life, and not everyone's sure they'll get to see the parade, there's a mood of anticipation on the streets.
稍微有点影响是吧？整个什么有些这个交通线路啊，什么这个那几天都有些放假了是吧？不让通行的，有些地段管制了。但是这没事啊是吧？国家这么大的事，我们应该要听国家的是吧？
我朋友看到过，但是我没有，因为我感觉是不是最近北京那边管得比较严，比较戒严，就是我感觉我们普通老百姓可能是过不去的。但是我自己是非常想去的，想去亲临现场看一看。
Those who will definitely get to see the display include a range of invited world leaders. These include African leaders like Zimbabwean President Emerson Mnangagwa, who are being welcomed in style, as well as some VIPs who find common cause with China's challenge to the United States and its push for a multipolar world. Kim Jong-un is on the way from North Korea in his armored train. And Russia's Vladimir Putin, fresh from a Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit, will be there too. One place watching the parade especially closely is Taiwan. China claims Taiwan and says it won't rule out using force to take it. But Taiwan sees itself as sovereign, using the official name the Republic of China, or ROC. While the parade will show off China's latest military tech, the reaction to the event in Taipei is as critical as it is cautious. Officials in charge of China ties say the idea the Chinese Communist Party beat Japan is a distortion of history. Most of the fighting was carried out by the ROC's nationalist forces, and that the Chinese communists that later pushed them to Taiwan only used the conflict with Japan to strengthen themselves. Then, as Taiwan's deputy minister in charge of China ties says, there's the issue of the bill for the parade, and who will end up footing it.
那今天9月1号正好是中国实施强制社保的日子哦。那有很多的这个基层的这个中小企业啦，甚至是劳工哦，缴不起这个保费，那他们愿意花费超过1500亿台币来举办一场军演，但是却忽略掉现在中国内部经济、还有劳工、还有社会这些问题哦。我也不晓得这个中国的人民碰到这样的情况，心里会作何感想。
Whatever people's true feelings, the spotlight is coming to Beijing Wednesday. The decorations are set, the stands ready, and even from the rehearsals, the message is clear. China has arrived as a global military power. The question now is how rivals like the United States and those in Beijing's crosshairs like Taiwan adapt. Luffy Li and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
Ahead of China's major military parade on Wednesday, Taiwan's defense experts gathered to discuss the threats posed by the People's Liberation Army and how the country might respond. One focus is the role of the Chinese Air Force, as Taiwan's terrain is not suited for ground warfare.
台湾没有 strategic depth， 就是说没有战略的深度，没有办法能够用 space 土地换成时间。像乌克兰那么大，当俄国侵略的时候，他们可以往后退。台湾没有这个享受，没有这个 luxury。 所以台湾要 buy time 在前面。
China's aerial pressure on Taiwan continues, with 10 Chinese military aircraft detected around the island on Tuesday. To counter grey zone activity like ADIZ incursions and better prepare for asymmetric warfare, Taiwan has steadily raised its defence spending, with next year's proposed budget set to exceed 3% of GDP. Experts say developing weapons with other countries would improve Taiwan's military capability.
选择一个好的武器，不见得是我们自己做的，也不见得一定都采别人。为什么我们不能跟人家合作，然后把这个东西做成我们希望的？我相信有很多的选择。
Taiwan is set to receive new weapons for its air force next year, including advanced jets and drones. On September 2nd, 1945, Japan's formal surrender ended World War II, but the victory that reshaped Asia still leaves divided memories. Bryn Thomas examines how Taiwan both won and lost history's biggest war.
aboard the USS Missouri in Tokyo Bay on Sunday, September the 2nd, 1945, the most horrible war in history came to its complete and formal end.
80 years on, the end of World War II is remembered differently across Taiwan. For men like Yang Fucheng, a Taiwanese who fought for Imperial Japan, the day signifies loss and hardship.
中国国民党来当时，每次唔做来只欧北来，唔知发生一个二八事件，二八事件喺当时啊呢，主要牺牲就是我参加这件等嘅啫。
But for those who fought for the Republic of China, then an allied power, Japan's surrender was a victory. It ended decades of war on the Chinese mainland and brought what they saw as the liberation of Taiwan from 50 years of Japanese colonial rule. That victory came at the cost of millions of lives. Yet within 4 years, China's civil war ended in communist victory, and the nationalist government, led by the Kuomintang or KMT, were forced to retreat to Taiwan.
跟日本人打仗啊，那个是日本人是凶悍，他是训练过的兵，打仗不一样。而中共的兵呢，他先用民兵来攻击你，这些没有训练的来攻击你，你的子弹咚的，差不多快打光了。
Hui Zhengkang was among the nearly 1 million ROC soldiers who fled to Taiwan in the late 1940s as refugees. Their goal was to use Taiwan as a launchpad for retaking the China they saw as having been stolen by the communists, then led by Mao Zedong.
Formosa, last-ditch stronghold of the Chinese Nationalist Army, carries on with feverish preparations for repelling the long-expected communist invasion from the mainland.
50 years of Japanese rule in Taiwan had been harsh but orderly, bringing rapid development. When the nationalists arrived, worn down by nearly a decade of war in China, they came first as occupiers and later as refugees, facing the very real threat of conquest by the communists.
因为这个台湾参与二战这件事情，其实是以日本人的身份在参与二战。问题是在战后台湾那个统治台湾的这个政权是当年跟日本是 互相敌对的政权，也就是说，台湾人就曾经参与过战争的。
In Taiwan, the ROC inherited a population that until very recently had been their enemies. For half a century, Taiwan's people had been educated in Japanese schools, accustomed to Japanese administration, and steeped in wartime propaganda.
今年我回来台湾，回来台湾看到这个国民中国政府。 就我美国政府看这做啥失望去。
When the KMT took control of Taiwan, it ruled with an iron fist and persecuted those who'd served in Japan's military while giving its ROC veterans preferential treatment. But by the 1980s and 90s, Taiwan started its path to democracy and the KMT shifted from authoritarian rule to an elected party, and historical perspectives began to change. Soldiers who'd fought on the losing side were now acknowledged for their role in shaping Taiwan. But differences over the war's outcome still remain.
今年是抗战胜利80周年，也是台湾光复80周年，也是二战结束80周年。对于中华民国，这是非常具有历史意义的日子，尤其是80年前中华民国政府、中华民国国军浴血抗战。
While the KMT uses the term War of Resistance, the ruling Democratic Progressive Party, founded in post-war Taiwan, goes with end of war, a phrasing it shares with Japan. And so, 80 years after the guns fell silent, a quieter battle still simmers in Taiwan. Ryan Wu, Jeffrey Chen, and Bryn Thomas for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan President Lai Ching-te has emphasized national unity in a speech to military members on the eve of Armed Services Day.
但我们要的和平，是透过实力达到的真和平。唯有强化国防战力，落实全民团结，我们才能够真正守护国家主权与民主、自由、人权。
Lai said his administration remains committed to improving pay and working conditions for military personnel. This comes amid a debate over whether next year's defence budget should include increased benefits. Lai also presented awards to distinguished service members at the ceremony. A high-profile security summit in China saw several non-Western leaders signal cooperation on a new world order that challenges US dominance. They're also backing calls to build a new development bank. Our reporter Chris Gorin explains what happened at this year's Shanghai Cooperation Organization.
This marks the end of more than 20 national leaders meeting in Tianjin, China. At the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit, Chinese President Xi Jinping pushed for a new multilateral world order.
和平发展合作共赢的时代潮流没有变，但冷战思维、霸权主义、保护主义阴霾不散。
In a joint declaration, member states agreed to establish a new development bank. China also pledged about $280 million in aid and $1.4 billion in loans this year to support the bloc. India and Russia were central to both the optics and message of the summit, with their leaders standing together and praising ties, after new U.S. tariffs on India took effect last week over its purchases of Russian oil.
कठिन से कठिन परिस्थितियों में भी भारत और रूस हमेशा कंधे से कंधा मिलाकर चले हैं। हमारा करीबी सहयोग न केवल दोनों देशों के लोगों के लिए बल्कि वैश्विक शांति, स्थिरता और समृद्धि के लिए महत्वपूर्ण है।
This sentiment echoed by Russian President Vladimir Putin, referring to Modi as a dear friend and lauding their cooperation on the international stage. Putin also met with the leaders of Iran, Vietnam, and Turkey, signaling a broader, non-Western alignment. Wrapping up the summit, China's foreign minister echoed his leader, calling for an end to what he called the monopoly on global governance.
多边主义是全球治理的基本路径，全球治理是大家的事儿，关系到每一个国家的切身利益，要靠协调合作，而不是单边霸凌。
China ends the summit, its largest ever, with momentum. Now, the bloc of nations will find out if declarations can result in deliveries. Patrick Chun and Chris Gorin for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan's foreign ministry has responded to backlash from China over Taiwan's top diplomat reportedly visiting the Philippines. It comes as speculation grows over why the trip has been kept so quiet. Cadence Caranta reports.
Taiwan and China are once again at odds, this time over a reported visit by Taiwan's Foreign Minister Lin Jialong to the Philippines, there as part of a business delegation. China slammed the trip last week, its foreign ministry accusing the Philippines of violating international norms and saying that there is a price to pay for trampling on China's red lines. On Tuesday, Taiwan's foreign ministry hit back.
基本上，中国对于世界各国，他们的红线非常的多。 那我觉得国家间的交往应该是比较相互尊重，然后能够互利互惠。那对于它的红线，实际上我想台非要促进双方的经贸投资，加强两国的经贸关系，我想这是非常自然跟正常的，所以他们也无权置喙。
The foreign ministry has yet to confirm Lin's visit. On Tuesday, it declined to comment on whether he was a part of the delegation, but his presence has been widely reported by media, largely citing anonymous official sources. And a social media post by a Filipino real estate company appeared to show Lin speaking at a business meeting. It was later deleted. This has raised questions about why Taiwan seems to be trying to keep the reported trip under wraps. Some have chalked it up to tensions between China and the Philippines.
当然，菲律宾它面对和中国之间的这个关系主要是在南海这边的这个状况就已经非常的这个紧张，那而且他们有非常直接的碰撞，所以说我觉得如何让这件事情不要更过度的复杂化，应该是菲律宾的一个主要考量。
That the Philippines let Lin visit at all is also seen as significant and could possibly signal a desire to boost cooperation with Taiwan as relations with China deteriorate. Others say being cautious about publicizing diplomats' trips abroad is not unusual for Taiwan, given the frequent backlash from Beijing.
In consideration of host country concerns, Taipei may choose to be more quiet about these visits in order to ensure that substantive communications and negotiations can move forward.
Japan faced similar backlash from China after Lin's trip there earlier this summer. And experts say though every trip will involve different considerations about how much to reveal to the public, constant pressure from Beijing on both Taiwan and its partners abroad is a key factor. Andy Xue and Cadence Quaranta for TaiwanPlus.
New appointments to Taiwan's National Security Council are raising eyebrows for how young they are. But the president hopes these young people can bring new perspectives to the council. Tiffany Wong has more.
Taiwan's National Security Council may be turning a new leaf. Recent appointees are notably young for their posts, with the average age of the 3 deputy secretaries at just 37 years old. The group includes new additions Li Wen, who leaves his post as a spokesperson for the presidential office, and Vincent Zhao, a Taipei city councilor. They joined Deputy Secretary General Lin Feifan, who had been the youngest ever to take the position when he was appointed last year.
市政议题即便重要，这一切仍建立在维护台湾的民主与国家安全之上。这也就是说，身为民意代表，我们都必须正视台湾处在一个非常复杂的地缘环境。
Zhao previously headed the political division of Taiwan's representative office in the U.S. and also has experience working in the foreign ministry. It's hoped his experience, along with his relative youth, will breathe new life into the NSC.
主要就是民进党想要培养他自己的国安外交的人才。那当然，目前的川普政府他未来的一个对台政策，可能还有相当程度的不确定性。我们台湾当然希望说能够有更了解川普政府的一些人才，能够在我们政府里面工作。我想这是赵一翔他会被重用的一个很重要的关键。
The cabinet shakeup comes on the back of a failed mass recall movement this summer, and as the ruling party seeks to restore public confidence. With Taiwan facing ever-increasing gray zone threats from China, those in charge of national security will tackle challenges bigger than ever before, and the public will be watching whether the new appointees will bring the fresh blood and new perspectives the country needs to better protect itself. Chris Ma and Tiffany Wong for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan's legislature has passed several amendments meant to relax rules for permanent residency and work visas for foreign university graduates, digital nomads, and the families of gold card holders. The law also now allows them to receive disability certification. To learn more about how these changes affect foreigners in Taiwan, our reporter Irene Lin spoke to David Chang, the founder of Crossroads.
Who would you say is the biggest beneficiary of these amendments?
If you look at the amendments, it actually kind of spans across different kind of demographics of immigrants. What you should see is as a progress of extending it bit by bit, rather than a focus on one particular area, and particular focus. Yes, there are benefits to people who are long-termers, but there's also, you have to see kind of talent circulation as one big cycle about the people who are coming and the people who choose to stay, and kind of along the lines of how do we make those processes easier and more open for people along that process.
Now let's talk about your campaign for disability inclusion for foreign residents. What kind of people have you worked with?
The first person who actually kicked off this initiative that brought it to our attention, his name is Oliver, and he was a French national living in Tainan. He was onset by a sudden case of ALS, and very, very severe, basically rendering him from a completely autonomous individual in Taiwan, and over the course of a year, completely immobile and dependent on his the family of his former girlfriend's family to take care of him, because he had nowhere else to go. Taiwan was already his home. He's already been living here for decades. He was unable to afford a lot of financial expenses that were piling up due to his treatments, and his inability to access even something as simple as a free wheelchair or a wheelchair, because he could not prove he was disabled without the official recognition.
How would the amendments benefit people like Oliver?
We were able to first open up disability certification last year and convince Ministry of Health and Welfare to open it up to people from countries with a reciprocal relationship. However, that was an administrative move. With this current reform, it cements into law. Not only cements into law these protections, but also opens it up to people from any country who are permanent residents, who are foreign professionals, and who have lived in Taiwan for 10 plus years.
Apart from disability certificate, I understand that getting government subsidies requires household registration. How does that work for permanent residents here?
So currently, according to the law, only naturalized or citizens of Taiwan are able to acquire household registration, which is huji. Unfortunately, even people who are able to acquire disability certification are finding themselves without household registration and inability to be able to access a lot of very main services and assistance that are actually open and available for people with disability in Taiwan. You'll find that a lot of financial subsidies relating to help in paying for expensive medical equipment or treatments are still unable to be accessed. The reasoning for this, according to the Ministry of Health and Welfare, is that if you don't have household registration, they have no ability to, gauge their assets, because a lot of these subsidies are based on an individual's financial assets before it's calculated. So it's still a gap. However, they're able to qualify for certain services and benefits, such as something as a disabled parking permits and at least recognition by their medical providers that they do have a disability.
That was David Chang, founder of Crossroads in Taipei. Thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. Before we go, we're heading to El Salvador for the traditional Battle of the Fireballs. I'm Laurel Stewart. Take care and see you next time.